Hi guys, this is my angry feminist slam poem that I was talking about. She's fucking gorgeous. And I'm sure we've all been staring just a few too many seconds, but her verses, God, her verses, have been ghosting around the breadth of her hips, rippling like gasoline in the crevices of her lips, and no one's thinking that her body needs to fluctuate or shrink, because in this moment, she's perfect. Just perfect. And she is not a classic beauty, but her stretch marks are artwork, scored down her thighs like tally marks, counting up her courage in the dark on city streets when it's all glinting eyes and not enough bronze lamplights. Roman nose and monkey toes and eyes just honest enough to be a target. And they tell her that her chest should be more prominent, but the tits are always bigger than the distance between a rape whistle and a wolf whistle. With a slip of his lips, he's showing her how a kiss can be chauvinistic. But orders like, touch me there, lay like that right there, don't move, don't you dare, don't matter, because she was lucky enough to have looked pliable enough for you to want to fuck her in the first place. Is that right? Or something like that. And even if you're not as bad as all that, I'm left to wonder why you judge how little these girls are hurting, not based on what they told their therapist, but by eyeing how low-cut their top is, because you've never once been right about it. Or is it because you don't think that they deserve it? The silence that should be granted them on the subject of what people will think of how much they showcase their skin. Maybe she's just proud, because at one point her left breast could have displayed a bullet hole, self-inflicted, but didn't. And think, when she crosses her legs, no matter how seductive it is none of your fucking business when or if she reopens them. Maybe she wants to show off her midsection, so she can question if the punches she swears she feels, if the poetry that pounds her are visible from the outside yet, and after all, she worked pretty goddamn hard to get her waist to look the way it does, the way you said is optimum. For months, she dropped to the floor, folding shoulder to knee and eating what the magazines prescribed to her as a recipe for pretty every night on the floor, because the doctor's office weight, percentile ranges, and teenage faces and games to prove who hates themselves more has brought her to a point where only feeling alluring corresponds with being worth something. And then they cringe at the exposed plateaus and mutter, we don't want to see it anymore. And sometimes they try to justify their expectations with be strong or empty, you're beautiful. But paper cuts are flesh wounds too, and she is dressing herself in flawless fabrics and brushing her cheeks with a pink that looks the color of ribbon flesh on the inside of her mouth, smearing her eyelids with a shade that looks like it could have come from the bottoms of her feet, and she still doesn't feel pretty. Because when she strips it all away, like they say she should someday, they say, we don't want to see it anymore. Now she's rendering herself helpless to the inanimate. I will never be as pretty as the Sierra Nevada, never as attractive as Babylon, never as breathtaking as coral reefs, never as stunning as her. Now the ink looks ugly just because it's being molded by her pen. The map looks grotesque because it's being traced by her hand. He looks inadequate because he's lying in her bed. And she can't show it because they don't want to see honest. There shouldn't be any reminders that our bodies are now back alley sanctioned, degraded, and throbbing with the decisions that must be made when the government summons its horde of white men and says, we don't want to pay for you to save that baby from being crushed beneath the weight of all the lives it will be able to lead because of being stuck in and started out in a lifestyle like squalor, because we don't want to pay for your welfare anymore. Come to the part of your country that you're afraid of because it makes you feel so guilty. And tell that mother to her face that she's lazy, while she's working 2 dead-end jobs and still can't provide because you didn't feel like her liability child was an expense that was righteous enough for you. And it wasn't a necessary cost to provide the Planned Parenthood protection for the sex to be safe in the first place, either. Now we're left to be wary of every sideways glance in a parking garage because the woman's body can become something perceived as property more easily than she could be accepted for, breathing too heavily in response to the presence of a girl because they want our love to live up to the standards of their holier-than-thou ceremonies. But as soon as that love involves 2 women, they say, we don't want to see it anymore. And there are a lot of people with a bone to pick with society and government, but first and foremost, my rights for control over my own vagina are not up for interpretation. And it's my decision. If I want to wear skirts well above my knees, fall in love with guys or girls without condemnation for my sexuality, do not take it out on me if you are not at ease with the anatomy of your own species.